You know, my wife keeps watching these crime shows of these cold case files, these unsolved murders, and even modern murder mysteries and stuff like that. She's probably thought of about a million ways I could die. So if I ever disappear, you know who to go talk to. So, hi everybody, how's it going, eh? Or good evening, I should say. Todd the Cheap Drums guy. Who else? Um, this morning I put out a little video about that interesting little test I did with the swim noodle inside one of my Premier snares. And there was one more, or two more little things I wanted to try, which was bubble wrap inside one of my snares. And also I wanted to try with that swim noodle inside my 16-inch floor tom, also a Premier, because it's the loud of my floor toms. It's the loudest of them, and it seems to ring quite a bit. I just wanted to see what that would do. But you guys get to hear firsthand, and I do also, what the bubble wrap inside this snare, uh, how's it make it sound? This snare is I, it's a 13 by, I think it's a 13 by 4 or 13 by 5 Sound Percussion Lab kit, and it's loud. I mean, it is like gunfire loud. And it came with a Remo Emperor coated on it that was heavily worn. So again, when I ordered this set, I ordered the new head, and I bought an Evans heavyweight for it, and that head seemed to really make it even louder. It's a good head though, very durable head. But I had an extra Evans HD dry. Well, actually, no, I think the HD dry is what it came with, and that sounded all right. And that's what I ended up using for it, because the heavyweight head just, it was too loud of a crack, and it just got my PTSD all acting up. But so I did swap it out. I put the heavyweight back on it for this test, just for shits and giggles, see what would happen. And this snare also, I also put, well, as you can see inside, there's bubble wrap. But as you can also see, I got the Pure Sound equalizer wires on that to try to help control it. Because not only the volume, there's a lot of overtone with it too. But the bubble wrap, it's the larger bubble wrap, the larger bubbles on it. And it was a big square piece, about maybe 4 inches bigger around than the drum was. And I stuffed it in there. And I folded the excess back in on itself just to see what it would do. I don't think it's touching the, well, I can't really tell if it's touching the batter headed. I don't think it is. But it's pretty much covered the entire reso head. And I don't know what it's going to do really. I'm assuming it'll tone it down quite a bit. I'm hoping it changes the volume, because when your snare does kind of overpower your toms, the sound of it. Well, it should. But I mean, that snare just seemed to be louder than my most brightest cymbal crash I could get. And so it was just a little too much. And I felt bad that I didn't use it very often. But let's see now that, or let's see what this sounds like with that bubble wrap on the inside. Now, I tuned this low to medium, kind of a happy place in between. So this is with just the bubble wrap in it. And there's no moon gel or anything, and let's just see what we got out of it, eh? Please let this work. I don't want to get embarrassed. From my perspective, it's very dry. Uh, Volume wise, it's about perfect, I think. Um, I really wasn't expecting it to be that dry though, but it's not bad. I mean, I probably could trim it to fit a little bit better, but I actually really like that sound on that. See what it sounds like with the snare off. Those wires must be really loose. Well, I chalked that one kind of up as a win. It turned out a lot better than I thought it would. A lot better sounding. Oh, I got to change those snare straps too. But it turned out all right. I like that. So you didn't have to test out bubble wrap. I did it for you. Because that's why I'm the cheap drums guy. I'm the guy who does stuff other people don't. And because they have more common sense than I do. But the other thing I wanted to try, which was on my Premier 16-inch floor tom. Now this one out of my three, this one seems to be the loudest, and I think that's due to the density of the birchwood and also the size of it. But she just seems to be a lot louder and a lot more overtones. So let's see what she sounds like real quick. Oh, I did a preemptive strike and put a moon gel on there. But let's see what it sounds like without a moon gel. Just the Evans G2 coated head. That's not too bad. It's not a full piece of swim noodle around it. It's maybe a 3/4 piece. It definite. It got rid of a lot of the overtone. I think if I put a full piece around it, around the whole circumference of it in there, along the bottom of the resin head, I think it would get rid of a lot more. But I don't think that was too bad of a sound to it. Let me try it with the moon gel on there. She's got a little authority. She's still a little, I wouldn't say ringy. I think it's the cymbals kind of react a little bit. Oh, there's something over there that's making it react to it. But I don't know. I'd say that one's almost a win. A little more tweaking on that. We'll try her out and see what we come up with later. But let me throw a little story at you, I guess, since we're here. I have a couple more stories in line, mostly military. I didn't feel like doing a military one tonight, just because the storm going on outside right now. Tell you one about Lake Michigan, and those of you who don't know anything about the Great Lakes, really, well, they're only a lake in name. Lake Michigan, Huron, and Superior, specifically out of the five, are like inland seas. They're like oceans. They're absolutely massive. They're deep, and they're very unpredictable. And a lot of saltwater. There's a lot of saltwater ships come into the Great Lakes. They go down Lake Michigan into Chicago, up in Lake Superior to Duluth, and all that. And a lot of saltwater captains don't like traveling the lakes because they don't act like the ocean. The ocean, you have your big swells that are spaced far apart. You get the big waves, but they are spaced quite far apart. The Great Lakes, you get monstrous waves also, but they'll hit you from the front, they'll hit you from the back, they'll hit you from the right, and they'll hit you from the left. And it's like a monstrous, huge chop. And the Great Lakes are home to over 10,000 shipwrecks, and we've lost in the last 50 years. We've lost, like the Edmund Fitzgerald, the Carl D. Bradley, the Daniel J. Morrell. These are big ships from 600 to 700 plus feet long that just snap in the middle and go right down. And all of them took all their crew with them except one. And it's always terrified me being in the water. The water's always scared me to death. My wife loves boating now, and she talked me into getting our 25 or a 24-foot Sea Ray Sundancer cabin cruiser. So we ended up buying one of those, and to appease me, she let me buy a rigid inflatable dinghy to go along with it, kind of So when she sits on the boat, which is like a 5,000-pound couch for her, that I can go play around in the dinghy like a little jet ski. And we boated with a bunch of friends, and my best friend, he had a boat similar size to mine, but he bought a new one down and off a guy in Chicago. And this was a 50-foot Sea Ray Sundancer, a 50-footer, big boat, all like 15 tons of her. I mean, she was huge. It was a tour boat down in Chicago for the longest time, and he got a really good price on it. Just huge boat. And so one early morning, him and I and another guy drove down to Chicago from northern Michigan in a rental car, and he went to go pick up the boat, and we were going to help him crew it back up here. And I'd been in the bays off Lake Michigan, like where I live. We have East and West Bay coming off Grand Traverse Bay off Lake Michigan, but I'd never been on the big lake itself until now. And I was really leery. I really didn't want to go, but he was a friend of mine and I'm going to help him. So we get down to Chicago and I'm looking at this boat. I'm like, oh my God, it's flipping huge. Twin props, twin screws, you know. And the damn thing had a locomotive, a railroad locomotive horn on there. Oh my God, this thing was loud. Holy crap. And you could still hear it from where my house is down to West Bay. You could still, when he blows that horn, you could hear it. It's that loud. It's just crazy. But anyways, so we get in the boat and we got to fuel it up. And he maneuvers this thing just like he'd been doing it for 100 years. Right up to the fuel dock, we get fully loaded up. Out of this beautiful marina, out of Chicago, and right into Lake Michigan we go. And I'm really impressed by just the sheer mass of this boat. I mean, because, she puts up a wake. And as we're leaving Chicago, I look out back off the stern, and there's this huge, monstrous roll behind it. And we got these jet skiers coming in and doing some crazy stuff off the wake and all this kind of stuff, and it was kind of cool. And we start our journey out in the middle of Lake Michigan. And, and everything's going good. Everything's going fine. It's a very comfortable boat. I mean, you could house 30 people inside it. I guess it used to be a tour boat and a party boat and all that, but it was in still pretty good shape. And so we're motoring pretty good. And I think we get to the point where we lose sight of Chicago. We're probably, 20 or 30, 40 miles out in the lake or so. And my buddy and the other guy with us are playing with the motors. There's two controls for the speed and stuff, for the RPMs on the motors. And there's a gauge in the middle that tells you if they're in sync with each other. And they're toying with that. And I suspected, just by listening to the conversation, watching what was going on, that the gauge was screwed up. And they kept pushing one motor harder, and harder to try to get the gauge for them to link up. But when one engine's rolling 1,000 RPM more than the other one, something's not right. And I was right. Something wasn't right, and the motor failed. A little bit of smoke, nothing really to be concerned with, no fire or anything like that, but the motor shut down. Or we had to shut it down. And I'm like, oh Jesus, we're all right, we got another motor. And so he goes, well, we're far enough out here in the lake, we ought to just continue on. And where we were in Chicago, we were cutting across Lake Michigan to head to Michigan's western shore, just because there's a lot of marinas and ports along the way that after something else came up that we could pull into. But anyways, here we are, middle of Lake Michigan now, motoring on one engine. And the boat, because the port side motor went out, the boat has a tendency, is trying to, because only the one screw on the one side is going, so it's pushing the boat to the left. So you had to keep correcting, or trying to keep the rudders to a certain point so the boat will stay straight and you can follow your GPS. We got a big GPS on there. And we were doing all right. It just moves just a little bit, but we could keep it under control until our friend got in there, and he was spending more time dinking around on his phone, and you could actually track us online because of the safety functions on the boat. You could track us where we're going, and you see a point in there at time too. The boat actually did a circle. That's because he was messing around on his phone and not paying attention and steered the boat in a circle. But anyways, and we're motoring, so. And you know, we got time to kind of look around the boat and do things, and we went up and sat where the anchor is up front and sat and rode up there, and it was pretty neat. And it was very scary for me though, because when I look to the right, left, front, back, and I don't see any land whatsoever, I'm absolutely terrified. I mean, I can swim, but I sink like a rock. I'm not buoyant at all. So anyways, nightfall's coming. I go downstairs and take a nap so I can help drive during nighttime, because we're only doing 11 miles an hour now because we lost a motor. No problem. The sky ahead of us, it didn't look too good. So clouds, because the Great Lakes, you can't predict the clouds or the storms, and the skies were red, so, which actually is kind of wrong, because you know, red skies at night is supposed to be a sailor's delight. But later on, I was thrown from my bunk downstairs, and the boat is just heaving like mad, absolutely crazy. This is a 50-foot boat, and it's rocking up, coming down hard, up, down, and we're just getting beat up. So I go upstairs, everything's wet because the water, they had a little window up on the bridge, and they had green water over the deck, and it came right through, just like it was jello coming through a mold. It was kind of strange, but they got them all wet, so they closed it. But we didn't have any lights on except our navigation lights, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And he goes, turn on the light, the spotlight. So we turn on the front spotlight, and all you see is this wave and these waves, and we're hitting these waves. Now the bow of his boat sits up 6 feet off the water, and around the top of the bow there was a little fence rail that stood up on about another 2.5 feet. These waves, when you turn that light on, were 3-4 feet higher than that bow rail, and I'm like, oh my god. And I try not to show any emotion. You know, I'm a combat vet. You know, I don't want to look like I'm a sissy or anything. So he turns the light back off, and I turn to my friend, and I'm like, should I have a reason to be concerned right now? And he's just looking and looks back and doesn't say anything. He was trying to be tough, and I found out later that he was scared, but he didn't want to, you know, portray it to me. So I didn't say anything, and we just motored on through the storm. And I thought we were going to die. And luckily, we were close to, I think it was Ludington. We were approaching the port of Ludington, which is on Michigan's west coast. And there's a famous car ferry, the SS Badger, that travels from Ludington to Manitowoc, Wisconsin, a couple times a day. Huge ship, 400 and some odd feet long, used to carry railroad cars, but now it just carries automobiles. And it's a good icebreaker too, when they used it in the winter. But Badger was coming out. I believe it was the Badger. I don't think it was, I'm not sure, that could have been the ferry coming out of Muskegon too, but one of them, we were crossing our paths, and I think they actually called us to check and see if we were okay because of the storm. It was quite severe. And at this point, I'm almost pissing myself. But luckily, there's the break walls of Ludington, and he made it a point. Well, we're not going to do this anymore. So we ended up pulling the boat into the harbor in Ludington, pulling up to the gas dock. He again, with just one engine now, he spun that thing around so beautifully, and it came to rest right up against the fuel dock with barely even a little bump. It was just impressive. But that was that for that trip. He called his wife and said, we're down to Ludington at such and such a place, come down and get us. And so she came down, and he linked up with the Marine Service there to get the boat taken out of the water, and a brand new engine put in it. And that was kind of expensive. And I told myself there, I'm never getting on a goddamn boat out in Lake Michigan again. It was just crazy. Well, wouldn't you know it, a couple weeks later, brand new motor in the boat. Bring. Hey Todd, we're heading down there to pick up the boat such and such a time. You're coming with us. Oof. I'm like, all right. we should be all right. We got a new motor. So anyways, get all our stuff packed on the boat, get ready to go from Ludington all the way up the west coast and down in Grand Traverse Bay down to our home port. And so right out in the water we go on the Lake Michigan. And she wasn't as rough as the other day. She was a little choppy this time. It was probably 3 or 4 foot waves. And I think we were just south of the Manitou Passage, which is you get the Manitou Islands, Fox Island, Gull Island, all that. I think it's the Beaver Island Archipelago, and it's actually the shipping lane goes through there, and we're just getting ready to enter that, and then something happens with our starboard motor. It goes out. What the hell? And coming through the Manitou Passage, I don't know what it was, but the waves picked up again, and we're looking at 5, 6, 7 foot waves. I mean, it was pretty sizable. We're getting the boat rocking pretty good again. And that was the longest damn trip, going all the way up through there, past Leelanau County, and turning back around and coming all the way back south on one motor again. Only happened to us. But it was kind of nice. We got abreast of Suttons Bay, Michigan. A little familiar sight started heading up the bay towards us, and my wife had commandeered our boat, which was sitting down at the marina. And she had a friend on board, and they came out to greet us as we came in, and it was kind of cool. And which is funny, my wife could always drive the boat better than I could. She loved being on the water, but you know, thankfully for me, we don't have the boat anymore, because that Lake Michigan trip scared the absolute dog piss out of me, and I will never ever go on the big lake again. But anyways, that's my little quick story. I'm Todd, the Cheap Drums guy, and I probably should save my strength, because I got a lot of snow shoveling to do tomorrow. But you guys have a great day, a great evening, or great whatever. And just remember, if I disappear, look for my wife. She probably killed me.